Thrive Nation, get ready for a laser show. On today's show, we're interviewing Rehmit Sethi. That's Ramit Sethi, R-A-M-I-T-S-E-T-H-I. This guy is a two-time New York Times best-selling author and a multiple-time guest on the Tim Ferriss Show. And on today's show, he joins us to teach why it's important to design your dream life. He teaches how to start, build, and grow a successful online business. He talks about how to buy your time back and how to optimize your schedule. And he actually teaches how he personally made over $100,000 in just one day. He teaches why he likes everything to be organized and why he had to write a blog for 3 consecutive years before monetizing it at all. All this and more as we enter into today's edition of the Dojo of Mojo Faux Show. It's the Thrive Time Show on your radio and podcast download.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colin Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of 5, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C&Z up on your radio, and now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here.
Yes, 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 and yes. Ladies and gentlemen, on today's show, we're interviewing Rehmit Sethi. Ramit, how are you, sir?
I am great. That's the greatest podcast intro I have ever heard.
Well, I tell you what, through the power of a lot of editing and a lot of just focus, it's a good plan B intro for a guy who's a Class A interview guest like you, like yourself, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Now, you are a two-time New York Times bestselling author and the founder of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Can you share with the listeners out there what I Will Teach You to Be Rich is all about?
Yes, and I want to start off by saying that I was sober when I picked the name I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I was in college. I don't know if I would choose the same name again, but I did it. I'm stuck with it, so I'm going to roll with it.
Got it.
All right. So I Will Teach You to Be Rich, although it sounds like a huge scam, is actually about creating your rich life. Now, I started with money. A lot of people have no idea what they're doing with money. What's a Roth IRA? What's a 401k? Hey, I have $5,000 in my checking account. What should I do with that? And most of the advice tells them, cut back on lattes. That is not the advice you want to follow. So I talk about how to make your money grow for you, how to invest, low-cost, long-term investments. After that, a lot of people choose what their rich life looks like. Some people want to negotiate a $25,000 raise. I show you how to do that, even the words to use. Some people want to start a business. Some people want to travel for a month per year. So it's all part of a rich life. But the critical thing is that you choose what your rich life looks like. You don't let somebody else choose it for you.
Your title of your book sounds like a scam, and I'm glad you said that because it makes it easier for me as a host here. It does sound like a scam. This just in, it sounds like a scam. But so does the 4-Hour Work Week, and some would even argue that Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill sounds like a scam title. How did you meet Tim Ferriss, your fellow scam title guy?
Well, Tim and I are friends, and we always joke that we definitely have the scammiest sounding book titles on that are not scams.
I know they're not. No,
okay, that's the important thing. Let's be clear, okay? So Tim and I met many, many years ago. I think Tim's book was coming out in a year or two from then, and he reached out and we got together, and I really liked him. And we started talking about self-development and testing. We're both into optimization and testing. And we just became great friends, and I've been on his podcast a few times, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we got to know each other.
Now, you have had just unbelievable, epic, mind-blowing success in your career, but you said you were working on this book in college. Can you share for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with your background, what was your life like growing up, and just kind of walk us through the beginning of your career?
I grew up in Northern California. I'm one of a family of 6. My parents are immigrants from India. And we grew up actually a very normal, nice childhood. But there are a few things we didn't do. So we didn't really go on many vacations. We certainly did not have a beach house or something like that. My mom stayed home with us. My dad worked. And as time went on, when it came time to apply to colleges, my parents basically said, look, you got to get scholarships to pay your way to college. And so I'm a systems guy. I like building systems so that I can do the same amount or less work and get better and better results.
Amen.
Okay, so that really informs the rest of my life. And so I built a system to apply to about 65 scholarships. And I got that first scholarship check. I'm 17 years old or so. It's the tech boom, 1999, 2000.
Yep.
I think I'm a genius, so I invest in the stock market using my scholarship money. And pretty soon I learned I was not a genius because I lost half that money.
Ooh.
And I realized, man, I better learn how this money stuff works. And so as I went to college and I found enough scholarships to pay for undergrad and grad school, and I was learning about technology and psychology, and at the same time I was learning about money. And so that was the origin of how I got interested in money and psychology.
So you're interested in psychology and money. You've lost half of your money in the stock market. At what point did you start writing a blog? When did that happen?
So after I got pretty good with my own money, it took me a few years. Then I started trying to teach other people, in my classmates. And this is a pattern. And I actually love this pattern for everyone listening. I think all of us like getting good at something. And a small amount of people like to turn around and teach other people what they've learned. So there's this phrase that goes around, those who can't do, teach. I hate that phrase because actually the very, very best in the world love to teach. The greatest coaches love to share their knowledge. The greatest leaders write books. Why? It's not that they need the ego of being in a bookstore. They're usually multi-millionaires. But I wanted to turn around and teach what I had learned. So I'm sitting there at the dining hall, and one of my classmates would say, hey, I got my third overdraft fee at Wells Fargo. And I would say, hey, you should come take this class I put together. It's free, and it teaches you the basics of money. And everybody was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then they would never show up. Never.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to realize why. And the answer is that people don't like going to events about money. Any idea why?
Well, I know growing up in a home without money, there's a lot of sometimes shame about the subject. There's a lot of embarrassment, a lot of ignorance about it. All of that. I mean, am I missing something?
They don't like to feel bad. And so you're exactly right. Guilt, shame, anxiety. Is it too late? And keep in mind, these were 20 to 22-year-olds. Now, if you're listening and you're 40 or 50, you're saying, I wish I had gone to that class at 20. But if you're also honest, you wouldn't have gone at 20. And so I spent a year and a half trying to convince my friends to attend my free class. And there's a point where it's very frustrating, where you feel like you know the answer to help someone, but they're just not listening. And I think at that pivotal moment, you can either give up, or you can blame people, or you can change your approach. So maybe a little cocky, I decided that I still had something the world needed to hear, but it wasn't working what I was doing. So I started a blog. So it's 2004. I'm, I think, a junior or a senior in college, and I started writing on my blog, hoping that these lazy college kids will read from their dorm room, and that turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made.
I want to ask you this because I know somebody out there would get a little frustrated with me if I didn't ask you. How did you get, when you said you got good at managing money? When I was in college, I started a company called DJ Connection, which became one of the nation's largest wedding entertainment companies. And I got good by not being good for a long time, years of trying to mix music and make announcements and work the crowd. How did you get good at managing money? Because a lot of people would run out of money before they got good.
Well, I was earning money. That's the answer. I've been working since I was 14 years old. So during college, I had either a job. Certainly during summer, I had internships where I was earning money.
Yep.
And I was taking that money, I was saving it, I was investing it. And you have to remember that you can get good at money even before you're a multimillionaire, right? So I was starting off with small amounts, but that is exactly the way to do it. People think, oh, I'll figure this out once I have a lot more money. You think you're going to magically wake up, have $1 million in your checking account and know what to do with it? No. The way you do it is you start early with 20 bucks, 200 bucks, 2,000, 20,000. You make those little mistakes of overdrafts, of paying too much and realizing, oh my God, 1% expense ratio actually matters a lot. So that's how I was getting good at it. And then finally, when you get the same questions 25, 30, 40 times,
Yep.
and it's the same answer, you kind of know, okay, I know what people are thinking. That's how I knew I was getting good.
I get asked by people all the time as we approach our 2000th show here. People ask me all the time, how do you win the mental battle, Clay, of doing a show 9 times a week? How do you, and I would ask you the same thing, because I think that doing a blog for many people is almost impossibly hard. I remember when I started my first company, it's like, you make a bunch of calls, you get no successes. You make 100 calls, no yeses. You make 100. When you're blogging, how did you fight that mental battle to quit the blog before you saw any fruit from it? And what was your process for writing this blog?
So those were probably some of the darkest days in the business because there's no feedback at all.
Right.
And it's just the worst. At a certain point, you'd rather have someone telling you, you suck. At least someone's listening. That kind of explains why a lot of trolls are such losers on Twitter, but that's another story.
Yeah.
What I learned in the early days was I would try to get people to come to my classes for free, and they wouldn't work, right? They wouldn't come.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. So then writing the blog, and I like to write. So I think if you hate to write, you can't sit down and write a blog for the next 15 years. That's never going to work. So I've changed my view, which is now, hey, if you love video, start with video, right? I know plenty of people my students who run multiple 6-figure or even 7-figure businesses, and they basically have no blog. They have an Instagram channel or a YouTube channel, a podcast, but they're just like, I don't like to write. Fine. In the early days for me, I was motivated by creating an awesome piece of content, something that I knew I would be proud of. That lasted a little while. Then I wanted to get people reading it. I wanted comments. And that took me like 6 to 12 months to have anyone really start reading my stuff. Then it became this beautiful cycle where I could write something, get rapid feedback on it, and test it and improve it. So I never even wrote my book for years. It didn't come out until 5 years after the blog started, because every day I was writing new stuff and testing it to make sure it worked before I ever shared it with the general public. So I never even wrote my book for years. It didn't come out until 5 years after the blog started, because every day I was writing new stuff and testing it to make sure it worked before I ever shared it with the general public. So I never even wrote my book for years. It didn't come out until 5 years after the blog started, because every day I was writing new stuff and testing it to make sure it worked before I ever shared it with the general public.
The first time I heard about you, there was a person who came to a conference. This would probably be maybe 4 years ago at one of our conferences. And they had said, you should have this guy on your show. And the thing they said to me, I'll never forget it, is they said, this guy, he actually is a blogger who made $100,000 in a day. And right away, mentally, this is what I thought. I was thinking that. It was amazing that I was able to mic my mind. But I thought, that's what I was thinking. My inner dialogue was like, there's no, because you hear all these hackers, these scammers, these people that take advantage of people who are ambitious. And the difference between what you and Tim Ferriss are doing versus the scammers who are out there and the rest of the world that has a somewhat scammy title sometimes is that the stuff you teach is real and practical. It's very practical. And so can you share with the listeners, because I know somebody, as soon as I mentioned that you made $100,000 in a day, they're thinking, how? Could you share the story behind this?
Yeah. And first of all, I appreciate you saying that there's a difference between the run-of-the-mill person who promises you can make $1 million overnight, which is total no, you can't.
Right.
Versus someone who says, you actually can increase your earnings dramatically, but you need to work really, really hard. And here are some tactics. Here's the actual words you can use. But the most important thing is you got to create something people want, and you have to stick with it for a long time.
Right.
Fundamental difference. I hate scammers. I call them out on my site. And so I have zero tolerance for that. It's my unfortunate or fortunate luck that the name I Will Teach You to Be Rich puts me in this genre But, I try to bring my academic pedigree. I graduated from Stanford University,
Yep.
right? New York Times bestselling author. This stuff is credible, right? It works. I put my reputation on the line for this. So for making something like $100,000 in a day, I'll give you an example. So we have a product on advanced personal finance. This is just one of about 20 different programs that we have created. We create these online programs in areas of money, business, careers, and psychology. So if you come to us, you're like, I want to change industries. I want to get a better job. Great, we can help you do that. Or like, I want to improve my mental psychology, right? I kind of am always down. I'm spinning myself up into these holes. How do I get focused, right? How do I finish what I start? We can help you with that. So one of our money programs is advanced personal finance. And so what we did was we started off with this broad idea that we knew about advanced personal finance, which advanced means you make multiple six figures a year, or you have a net worth of, let's just say, over $1 million. So we know what to do in those scenarios, right? In our company, we have institutional knowledge. So just like back when I was in college, I got good at something and then I turned around and taught it. Same thing with creating these online digital programs. So what we do is we went to the market, we interviewed lots of people who are at advanced personal finance scenarios. They have a lot of money. They've kind of maxed out all their accounts. What should they do? So their options are they can do nothing, which is what most of them do. They can go get a financial advisor, but they don't know how, and some of these advisors are actually salespeople. Or we can show them what their options are at a great price for them and something that is valuable for us. So we created this program, and I think on one of our launches, we launched it to our email list, and we generated $482,000 and $482,851 in 5 days. So roughly about $100K per day.
Wow.
So how do we do that? That I would say that is like a fine performing product for us. It's not our largest, it's not our smallest. How we did that was we do intense amounts of research before we ever build a program. So we're interviewing lots and lots of multimillionaires. Tell us what you do with your money. Tell us what you wish would be happening with your money. We interview vendors that I personally work with. We interview CPAs, CFPs. We take the best of that material, we put it into the program. We videotape it, we edit it, we test it again with people in our user group. And then and only then does it earn the right to be called an I Will Teach You to Be Rich product. So that is how we go about creating our products. And that as you can tell, that's a lot of work. So right. Yeah, it's great to say, oh, somebody made $100,000 in a day, and that's an asset that will continue generating revenue over the next 10 to 15 years. But really, what I would prefer to talk about is the work that goes into it. Because if you can do that work, then you can make even much more money than that.
And I want to give the listeners out there some context who are not as familiar with your background as I am. Your courses, if somebody were to sign up and take these kind of courses, what does it cost to attend a course? And is it all online, or just kind of walk the listeners through what that looks like?
So typically when you think about buying a program, most people think about like a $39, $99 program. And those are fine. You get 5, 10 videos, whatever. We're not interested in that. Our programs range from a few $100 up to $10,000 or so, depending on how advanced they are and what the area is. Probably one of our most popular courses is about $2,000, and that's on how to start a business. Another one, similar price, how to find a dream job. Now, just to give you an example of the level of detail, if you came in and said, I want to find a dream job, we would not only show you how to identify what your dream job is, we would show you actual videos of negotiations, salary negotiations, so you can watch the body language and you can watch what words to say when the recruiter or the hiring manager says, you know what, sorry, that's outside of our budget. What do you say to that? We show you the exact words. So that's the level of detail. Similarly, if you want to come and start a business, we have a new program, Earnable. It's not enough to just show you, hey, here's how to find an idea. We actually have me doing sales calls and recording them so you can see exactly how you can sell something and you can hear the words being shared. This is the kind of stuff that you would never find anywhere else because it's extremely difficult and expensive to create. And that's what we love to do.
So for people who are now Googling you, I know our listeners tend to Google our guests as they're listening to the guests. That's sort of the thing they do. I'd love to have you talk about creating automatic businesses that let you live where you want and to earn what you want, because I own brick and mortar companies with real employees who, they have to come to work during certain shifts, and we got to wash towels, and we've got to we've got to cut haircuts. We've got to, clean carpets, or whatever the different businesses I'm involved in. And so I'm used to a lot of humans, a lot of moving parts. My partner has the largest auto auction in Oklahoma. He's used to real mechanics doing stuff. And you're sort of in this digital world that, and just in the way that Dr. Zellner's bank is very real to him, or the auction's real to him, or the haircut place is real to him, this world is real to you. Can you share about what it takes to go into, what all it takes to create an automatic small business that allows you to live where you want?
I'll give you an example of a small one, and then I'll take you up to a larger one, right? So it's different at every level. The beautiful thing is you can choose. So there are lots of people who have small businesses. They are one person. They work full-time on the business, and maybe they have a couple of contractors. Those contractors in the early days will tend to be maybe a tech person, part-time, 10 hours a week, and they may have a marketing associate, maybe an SEO person, or maybe an assistant or researcher, right? It can be as small as 1 or 2 contractors. And I know many of my students have that exact setup, and they generate anywhere between, at the very small end, $5,000, $10,000 a year. Many of them generate up to about $250,000 to $400,000 a year. Okay, so and how do you do that? Because if you have an amazing product or service, usually a product though, and you have traffic, then you can connect the two and you can sell it effectively. So that's pretty small and straightforward. Typically, those people tend to do a simple model. They have an email list. They have a product that's priced around $200 to $500 or so, okay, ballpark, and that's it. It's really straightforward. There's off-the-shelf templates that are basically free these days. Now, what happens is as they scale up, then they start to add team members, and this is where it gets interesting. A lot of people, including me, started off saying, I just want to have a small, intimate team. I don't want to have a lot of people. And I realized years later that small was not my goal. My goal was impact. And so if you want a bigger impact, you probably need to bring more people onto your team. And that is something that the internet world is becoming more and more comfortable with now, because they realize, wow, in order to be really good at this, I need a team. So some people will go and they can generally make it to $1 million, maybe even $1.5 million with a small team of roughly under 10. Again, now you have a couple full-time people. They could be contractor employees, et cetera. There's a tiny group of people who are making millions, and they might have a slightly or even quite considerably larger staff. And those are people who have multiple products, multiple funnels, multiple channels, that kind of stuff. So I can talk about any of those if you like, but that's the way it works.
Ramit, I want to have you, if you can't, I don't want to paint you into a corner here. I just want to ask you, do you have a particular student that you like to brag on? You go, this is a case study of somebody who wanted to know what to do. You told them what to do, and they put in the work. Are you at liberty where you could share maybe about a specific student or a specific website that we could direct our listeners to check out, or is that kind of outside of the bounds of what you want to do?
No. I'm happy to do it. I have so many. I'm trying to think where to start. So let me give you the name of one of my students. His name is Zach Arnold. Okay, Zach Arnold emailed me just a couple of days ago. His subject line, which I want to send you the screenshot of this email after this. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
He says in the subject, 200K, baby. And he writes, hey, Ramit, we'll keep this short for today. Joined ZTL August 8th, 2015. First product sale for $97 in January 2016. And then exactly 4 years later, he hit 200K in revenue while working full-time in Hollywood. So this guy is so interesting because he's an editor on some famous TV shows in Hollywood. I think Power is one of them, and there's a couple of others that you and I have heard about.
Yeah.
So he was working as an editor, and he wanted to create a product on how to stay healthy while you are an editor. It's a pretty interesting niche. I wouldn't have personally thought about it myself. So he creates this thing, and I had him, I invited him to New York once before. We did a video. He was about to do a launch. The launch did not go well. Okay. So he tried it, but he didn't give up. And a lot of times when you are selling something for the first time, you're not that good at selling. You don't know the market's pain points, what they want. So most people give up. He stuck with it. Now he's going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars in a year. So this is a great example of a guy. Zach Arnold from OptimizeYourself.me is one of tons of students. We have about 42,000 customers.
42,000 customers. And where do you call home? Where's your corporate office these days?
I live in New York.
In New York. Okay. So you haven't moved to Austin with Tim?
No, I have not. I came from California to Manhattan, and I've been here for a long time.
He hasn't aggressively tried to recruit you by pointing out the lower taxes, has he?
Oh, God. I got a lot of friends who tell me about taxes, and my answer to them is, why do you think that I created my own business? So I can live where I want to live, not where the taxes take me.
So you like New York. You love New York. I
love it.
Okay. Now, how many people are on your team now? How many people do you call as you've grown? How many people are on your team, just to give the listeners?
Approximately 25.
25. Okay. And so you've got a team of 25, and so many great things are going on right now. Do you remember how you got your first 3 customers or your first 4 customers? Did they all come in as someone who found you online on your blog or something?
Yeah. Well, I wrote my blog for free for, 3 or 4 years before I ever made a cent. Because I never started it to be a business. I started it because I wanted to teach people about money. It drove me insane to see the advice out there about cut back on lattes. I'm like, that's not how you're going to become financially successful. That's actually the worst advice. And so I started writing, and I never sold anything. I didn't want to do AdSense because it just seemed like a waste of time. It wasn't even going to cover my rent.
Yeah.
So I just said, forget it. I'm just going to write stuff. And I eventually built an email list. It was a big mistake of mine, maybe one of my biggest mistakes, to not set up an email list from day one. Because email is just huge. It's one of the biggest channels in terms of business. So finally I did. And eventually in late 2006, I decided I wanted to try selling something just to see if anyone actually buys anything online. Remember, back then, not the type of content purchasing that is happening now. And so I created an ebook called Ramit's 2007 Guide to Kicking Ass. As you can tell, I like provocative names.
Yes.
Okay, so I like had this thing illustrated and all this stuff, and I was really, really nervous because the first time you try to sell anything, you are petrified. You think everyone's going to call you a sellout. You think they're going to call you a scammer. You think no one's going to buy. And 2 out of those 3 things happened. So it was actually amazing. So I launched this thing, and I had such low self-confidence that I didn't even set up an automatic fulfillment system. I literally said, PayPal me $4.95, and I'll just email you the PDF. Because I thought like 50 people were going to buy it, maybe. And in the first day, I think we had like 100 plus, 200 plus. And over the course of that product, it generated tens of thousands of dollars. Now, what did I learn? Number one, I was scared all these people would call me a sellout. A lot of people did.
Yeah.
They said, oh, I will teach Ramit to be rich. And then on the other hand, a lot of people quietly bought. And they asked me, hey, this was awesome. What's the next thing you're going to create? And by the way, the people who bought had quadruple the open rates of the non-buyers. So what's going on there? Number one, if you sell something on the internet, people are going to call you. They're going to say, that should just be free. I could find it for free on YouTube. But you need to remember, why are people buying stuff? If I go to a restaurant, you think I go to them and say, I could make those eggs at home. They should be free? No, that doesn't make any sense. You're not simply paying for the eggs. You're paying for the ambiance. You're paying for the convenience. And you're also paying for not having to worry. So in our material, you are going to get some new stuff, or in any good material for that matter, any book, any product, you're going to get new insights you hadn't had. You're also going to get organization, and you're going to get someone spending years of their life on this. And you can comfortably say, wow, $10 or $2,000, that was the best money I ever spent because I could learn from this person. So that was what happened with that product. And those first three customers were people I did not know. And that was magical because I was like, wow, if they found out about this and bought, that means I could get 30 or maybe even 300. That was my dream at the time. And that proved to be a small dream.
Blowing my mind, Ramit. Now, I want to unpack this because you said, I believe that you wrote a blog for 3 consecutive years before you sold anything. Can you explain in general terms for the listeners out there, why when you're doing something like creating search engine content, do you have to write for 3 years? And how many pages of content were you writing a day? Or just walk us through what that looked like.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I did back then, but now I don't think that was the best strategy.
Got it.
Okay, so I've learned a lot. So I'm going to share what I did and why, and then now what I would do differently. So back then I wrote for free because I didn't know how to make any money. I was too scared to sell anything. I didn't have anything to sell. And the whole point of this was not to make money. It was because I wanted lazy college kids to understand how to use their money correctly. Okay? You have to remember, again, back at the time, AdSense was brand new. There was no affiliate networks like there are now. It was a totally different ballgame. The second thing is I think I wrote about 2 or 3 times a week consistently. So I was very consistent. Some of my posts were multiple pages. Some of them were short. I did not know anything about SEO. I just wrote good content that I thought would be helpful to people.
Got it.
Like if you and I were sitting around, you're like, what should I do with my money? I'm like, okay, let me break it down. Boom, 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 da-da-da-da.
Yep.
Straightforward, right? And I think the other thing is that I had a lot of fun with it. This is something you don't hear talked about a lot. If you're deciding I'm going to start a business about office chairs, fine. That topic sucks in my opinion. But if you really love office chairs, be my guest. But you better find a way to be entertained somehow.
I love office chairs. Let's go. I'm using the megaphone to talk about it. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
You got me
Can't
excited.
wait to meet this guy at a bar. Like, look, you better have fun. So when I was writing about money, you think I'm going to sit there and write about Roth IRAs every day? No, I was writing about that cheap friend who never tips when you invite them out for dinner.
Oh.
Right? I'm talking about love and money. I'm talking about what happens when one person earns less than the other. This is fun. It's stuff that I don't care if you like it, I like it. And therefore, when I like it, my audience loves it. Because everybody wants to see someone who's passionate about what they're doing. So that's what I did. Now let me tell you what I would do differently.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was awesome back in 2004. Things have changed. So number one, I would not wait years to sell something. I think that's a mistake. I didn't sell because I didn't know. Now, if I were going to go into this, it's one thing if it's a hobby, but it's another thing if it's a business. So if it's a business, you can wait. You don't have to sell on day one, but you should have an idea. Hey, I'm starting something so that I can generate revenue from this. And that would tell you probably office chairs would not be a great topic to write about because there's probably not a lot of money in it. I'm just guessing. I don't know the market. But like if people come to me and they're like, hey, Ramit, what should I start a business around? I'm really good with people. Well, that is not a topic that's going to generate revenue, but you could narrow it down to social skills, relationships. I mean, there's a million different ways, and some of those might be worth 1,000 times more than other domains. Okay, so that's number one. I would have a purpose. If it's a business, I would not wait years to sell. Number two, I would be thinking about creating assets. Assets can be the pages you write that will eventually rank for SEO.
Yep.
So I would be thoughtful about that. And I would create proprietary products and even named concepts. So that is how you build a real credible business. You lead with value, and then people eventually come and say, I want to know what else you can offer me.
Ramit, we're going to go into the lightning round because I've got 5 final questions for you. 2 from me, a couple from some other great guests we have here today. During your most recent Tim Ferriss interview, it was so good. I think I blacked out and had to watch it again, and then I happened again. I was like almost like a fainting goat. You were talking about paying a little bit of money for a little convenience. You know, spending a little extra money to have a much better experience. And I 100% agree with this. This is a core philosophy of mine. I just will not wait for my car at a hotel. I will find someone and pay them. I will not wait for seating at a restaurant or a bar. I will pay. I will not. I'll throw $100 at a problem. I will not wait for 15 minutes. And I heard a lot of what you were saying, and I'm like, oh, this is good. And I fainted like a goat, woke back up. Here I am. Can you kind of unpack your philosophy on this? Because that was powerful.
Thank you. So I have a phrase, a concept called money dials. And you can Google it and you'll find the whole thing about it. But for everyone listening, let me ask you a question. What is something you love spending money on? Love, not like love. Now, most people, their answer is going to be, well, actually, let me ask you, what is something you love spending money on?
Taking my wife on a hot date and then buying a Moscow Mule.
Oh, I like your taste in drinks. Okay, my man. All right. So what if now you could quadruple the amount you spent on that thing?
Okay.
What would you do?
If I could quadruple what I spent on that?
Yeah.
That'd be a big Moscow Mule, but I don't know.
So let's zoom out. What you told me you love. So most people, their answer is travel or eating out. Those are the most common ones.
Yep.
Mine is convenience. So like you, I will pay to have everything in my life like perfectly organized. I want it just, like I look like a psycho. I wake up, I can close my eyes and I know where everything is.
Amen.
That's my dream life.
Preach it.
Yeah. Okay. So for you, but you added relationships, which I love, taking your wife out. The point that if we zoom out is you love to spend money on time with you and your wife, quality time.
Yep.
Okay. What if you quadrupled the amount you spent on it? What would that look like?
I don't know, because I'm afraid of traveling and airplanes and the whole thing. I don't know. I was be like a very extended series of date nights, probably.
How interesting. You did what most people do. Most people take what they do and they just say, I would do it 4 times more. Okay. Like I had a guy in DC, I went on book tour last year. He says, I like to eat out. I said, what would it look like if you quadrupled your spend? You know what he said? I would eat out 4 times a week. I said, dude, think a little more creatively, man. What are you still going to be eating at Chipotle?
I'm a
if
slow
you're
learner.
Quadrupling your budget, 10x it. The guy finally gets quiet. He goes, I know what I would do. I said, what? He said, I have a list of every Michelin-starred restaurant in DC. I would go. And I said, who would you take with you? And the room is completely silent. The guy goes, I would take my family. Why? Because my family has never been able to eat at restaurants like that. That is a money dial. Okay. A money dial, it's called a dial because you can turn it way up like a stereo dial. And again, most people, they've never thought about this. When they think about spending, they only think about guilt and cutting back. Oh, I shouldn't be doing that because it's bad. Why? Because some guy on TV told me it was bad. It's bull. What I like to do with money is to start by saying, what would you spend more on? And when they get it, it all clicks, their eyes light up because they're like, okay, I would travel for a month. Oh, really? Where would you go? Oh, I'd go to Thailand. What seat would you sit in on the airplane? And they have never dreamed of actually considering sitting in seat 2F, which is, in my opinion, the best seat. And then where would you stay? What would you eat? Oh, room service? For the first time, yes. So a money dial allows you to start thinking about how can I spend extravagantly on the things I love, as long as I cut costs mercilessly on the things I don't. Now, for me, I like traveling. I can tell you about my travels every year, but convenience is my number one. So I have a personal assistant. Everything is sort of in its place and it's all organized. My calendar is it's like ballet. It's just beautiful. I know everyone listening is like, this guy just turned really weird. I know, it's weird. But your money dial is yours.
That's why we're on the phone right now. That's why we're doing this interview. I listened to it. I'm like, he's my brother. I was like, yes.
Probably related.
You have a calendar. It's all blocked out.
Dude, exactly.
Everything's organized. I was like, yes.
Yes, like I would love to just sit someone down and give them a tour of my calendar.
Yes.
I'll talk about it like it's an infant child. Look at how beautiful this thing is. Oof. Oh my God, look at the colors. Oh. So anyway,
this is hot. This is hot. Sorry, but this is a hot thing that's happening.
This is the most romantic podcast.
Unbelievable. Very romantic. Okay.
So for everyone listening, like the more you turn your money dial, the weirder it should get. The more you turn your money dial, the weirder it should get. The more you turn your money dial, the weirder it should get. Because the more you turn it, the more it becomes uniquely you. Okay? I travel to places that you probably would not want to go to. I set up my life in a way that you would not want to go to. That's because I turned my money dial way up. So I want everyone listening to think about what are the money dials that are important to you. Everybody's got at least one, and you intuitively know it. Is it relationships? Is it food? Is it wellness, health? Is it travel or eating out? And when you think about it, what if I quadrupled my spending on it? you will discover lots of interesting little voices in the back of your head. Why would I do that? That's wasteful. I could just go get it at Target. Yes, you could, and you probably should for some things. But what if you actually dreamed bigger? Suddenly, instead of living a life of scarcity, you get to live a life of abundance and start thinking, how can I turn that dial up?
Ramit, I want to respect your time, so here we go. Lightning round questions here. Josh with Living Water Irrigation is here. He's been a longtime client of mine. He's built a very successful irrigation company. Josh, you have Ramit here on the line. What's a question you want to ask the man, the myth, and the Ramit?
Hey, Ramit, thank you so much for being on the show and taking my question. The big thing I would ask for you is, and I know we went over it a little bit earlier and we talked about shame and disgrace and all those things. How do you get people to just start to get over the hump of their relationship with money and the awkwardness of the conversation about it? Or what would you encourage our listeners out there to just begin with getting over that fear of it, I guess?
That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. When most people think about money, and you ask them, what do you feel when you think about money? The answers are always the same. Shame, guilt, anxiety. Is it too late? And the first thing I do is I don't try to change what they feel, because people feel what they feel. You can't change that. But what I try to do is to show them that money can actually be a positive thing and can actually make you smile and happy. And the way I do that is by asking them about their money dial. And I really lean into that. So again, you'll discover if you do this money dial exercise, and there's videos of me doing it online, that people have never thought about money in a positive way. And what's interesting is if you take a parent, for example, and you ask them, what would you do if you could spend money on anything? What do you love? They always say the same thing, my kids. And you say, tell me about that. Where would you take them if you could quadruple it? It's always the same, Disneyland. And then you say, okay, let's put your kids aside for a second. Tell me about yourself, you and your husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend. What would that look like? And then they're stumped. You can then begin to make the connections of the joy that they feel when they give their children something. What about just taking a little bit of that joy and sharing it with their partner? Suddenly, they start to see a path forward, and it never involves you telling them, stop feeling guilty or anxious. You're never going to get someone to stop by telling them to stop. The best way to do it is to show them a path forward that makes them happy, that makes them feel in control. And then and only then should you start talking about asset allocation and Roth IRAs and all that stuff.
Knowledge bomb, then one more knowledge bomb just to blow my mind. I'm going to pass out again here. It's the whole fainting goat thing. Now, we have Corey Minter. He is a listener of the Thrive Time Show, a great guy. He and his wife have built a company called TrinityEmployment.com, which is one of the top staffing companies in all of Oklahoma for hospitals and medical organizations. Corey, you're here with Ramit. This guy's talked about how to make $100,000 in one day, how he's made millions online. He's a multiple-time Tim Ferriss guest. He's been blowing my mind. What question would you like to ask this man about money, life optimization, or anything really?
I love the idea of this money dial, and it really got me thinking when I was just listening. And one of the things that I would just be interested, what are some of the most valuable decisions that you've watched people make whenever you propose the idea of turning up this money dial? What are some of the greatest examples that you've seen?
Wow, I love this question, Corey. Thank you for the question. So I went on book tour last year, and I got a chance to ask this question across the country. And the DC example of the person going to a restaurant was mind-blowing. There was another young woman in Pasadena who said to me she goes, I love buying clothes. I would buy clothes all day, every day if I could. And the whole bookstore was just cracking up. And I said, awesome. And what would you do if you could quadruple it? She goes, I'd buy more clothes. I'd have boxes everywhere. And then I pushed her a little. I said, where do you buy clothes from? And she mentioned some store. It was like a equivalent of a Gap. And I said, where would you shop? She goes, Gap. I said, you have 4X, 10X, 20X the money to spend on this. What would you do? And she got very quiet. She didn't know because she had never considered actually thinking outside of that box of the same store she shopped in. I said, if you truly turn that money dial up to 10, maybe you would fly to Italy and maybe you would go to the factory of the Italian brand that you love the most and have something created custom for you. How do you think that would make you feel? And the entire room looks at her and she's just this huge smile on her face. Why? Because she had never considered thinking bigger than she was thinking right now. For her, she loves Gap. Nothing wrong with Gap. It's great. But people and humans are intuitively wired to want to think about what's next. Doesn't mean you have to go out and buy it, but at least to know, hey, if I worked really hard, what could I get? What could I do? Maybe I could buy more and give it to a charity. Maybe I could buy a nicer thing for myself. Yep. You know what? Maybe I could do both. So that is one of the biggest breakthroughs that I've seen, is people realizing it's not simply linear, that you can actually think exponentially larger with your money dial.
Thrive Nation, I want to get this disclaimer out there. I know Ramit's worried about it. He's not a hater of Gap. He loves the Gap band even from Tulsa. He doesn't hate the Gap band. Wes Carter, we have time for one final question. Wes Carter here, Ramit. He's a partner with wintersking.com. His law firm represents huge personalities like T.D. Jakes and Joyce Myers and Pastor Craig Rochelle, that kind of thing. And Wes always paints our guests into a corner. So it's really a battle of the minds here. So Wes, what final question do you have for the life optimization and wealth creating expert, Mr. Ramit?
Well, this one's a little bit of a softball, but
softball.
Corey just asked some of the best decisions that Ramit's seen someone make. I'm curious about.
I love this.
What are some of the worst decisions?
My God.
The ones that are most likely to lead to failure? Some of your horror stories.
Oh man. Okay, this is great. Hey, listen, extend the tape. We're going to talk for the next 3 hours about this. I can talk
extend
all
the
day.
tape. We've got to extend the tape and get another track ready.
Extend the tape and get another track ready. But fellas, first, Bruce wants to come in and talk to you. He's got a quick update for you guys.
I'm telling you, fellas, you're going to want that cowbell on the track.
And we're rolling in 3, 2, 1. Back to you in the booth.
Okay, so this is a great question because I think it's good to know what success looks like, but it's also great to know what failure looks like. So the most common failure modes that I see are, number one, it's simply procrastination, not doing anything. I see this with money. I see this with business. I did a survey of my, about 300,000 email subscribers. And I asked them, how long have you been waiting to start a business? For those of you who are interested. And around 50% of them said, years, more than 2 years. Like, that is way too long, in my opinion, to be waiting to even try something. You see this with money. People say, yeah, I ought to do that. I should do something around that. And then they wake up at 45 with 2 kids and a mortgage and they say, where do I go? I got to go to some financial advisor today. I'm running pretty late. Yes, you are. It would be better to start right now. Another failure mode that I see is skeptics. I really find it difficult to work with cynics and skeptics. And I know what this feels like because the name of my book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, etc. And the truth is, there's a lot of people out there you really shouldn't be listening to. Okay, you got to get educated. You got to read the reviews. You got to do your homework. But you will see people. It's so interesting. They'll come in and say, prove that this works. Okay, so they're already starting off looking for a reason it will fail. And if you show them the proof, if you answer their questions, they're actually not looking to take action. They're looking for an excuse to do nothing. So even when they win in their own argument, they lose. And if you want to Google, I wrote an article about 8 types of buyers who will never buy from you. You can search out Ramit 8 types of buyers. And I actually catalog these emails that they send me where they seem like they're interested, but I actually can tell right now within less than 3 seconds that they're never going to take action. So procrastination and cynicism are 2 of the biggest failure modes. And then the final one, this one's a little tough, is people who just can't stick with it enough, right? They'll actually join a program or a book or go to a gym, but they give up after 4 or 5 days or 4 or 5 weeks. And the key there is not that they are weak people. It's not that at all. It's they haven't built the right systems into their lives. And many of them have not seen the behaviors that successful people use. So they just keep doing what they've been doing, but praying that they'll somehow lose 30 pounds or make $100,000. They need to see what successful people do and start to model that.
Ramit, before we wrap up today's show, I spent several hours or minutes, it's hard to tell, I with all the blackouts while listening to your knowledge bombs. But here is a book idea tip that you can share for free with Tim Ferriss. It's called the 72-Hour Workweek. Pro tips for how to just get by in the world of entrepreneurship. And then the second for you, this is for you. This is straight from the heart. Okay. I will teach you how to be slightly above average most of the time.
Wow. I mean,
that is inspiring.
I think we're going to get a whole new market with that one.
It's awesome. Hey, man, thank you so much for being on the show. I know our listeners love this. Is there a specific place you want all of our listeners to go, or a specific action you would like for all of our listeners to take today? So
you can find me on iwillteachyoutoberich.com.
Got it.
You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Ramit, R-A-M-I-T. And just so everybody knows, for the first time in 4 years, we have a brand new business program coming out right now. It's going to blow your mind. I would love to show you how to start a business, find an idea, show you those sales calls that I made. For everyone listening, you can hear me bomb on some of these calls. You can also hear me close deals and see what worked and what didn't. And then I'm going to be touring the country, and I'd love to meet all of you in one of the cities that I'll be in. So come. The program is called Earnable, E-A-R-N, Earnable. Search for it, Ramit Earnable. Sign up, and I would love to see you there.
And I don't want any of our listeners to forget your website, so let me get out my megaphone here for the subtle reminder. Here we go, Ramit.
Check out iwillteachyoutoberich.com. That's iwillteachyoutoberich.com.
Ramit, you're a great American, my friend. Hopefully this has not been the most disturbing podcast you've ever been on.
I love it, and I just want to say I want your sound effects everywhere I go. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh, dude. And also, hey, one way to optimize your life, if you want to hire a bunch of guys that kind of look and act like the Wu-Tang Clan to cheer for you everywhere you go and to yell, "That's right," you'll get more respect.
I love it.
Okay.
Thank you. That's my new money dial.
All right, man. You take care.
Thank you very much.
And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom! '80 was the year of my conception. From the dorm room, founded DJ Connection. Entrepreneur of the year in '07. On my path to the top, I learned a lot of lessons. Kicked out of college, writing a parody rap. Dissed ORU like a Trump and Rosie recap. I've been known for getting stuff done, not giving a crap. And for jocking up wins while my competition nap. Now it is the Thrive Time Show on your radio. Catch the broadcast or the podcast download. If you got a business, we'll help it grow. God's got a plan you just didn't yet know about. Workflows, systems, scripts, and hiring. Motivating yourself when you need inspiring. These faces made for radio and not TV. Talking everything from Clay to Z. Auto washes, banks, haircuts, and glasses. You want to sell it? We've already sold it to the masses. No classes or prerequisites. Just business school as raw as it gets.
It's a Thrive Time Show on the radio. Yes, it is. Oh, yeah. It's all about you. 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 Yeah. So we bring the boom.
Yes, sir. It's Z and Clay, broadcasted from the box in the 918. Business school and the topic today. Check the syllabus, it's getting you paid. I'm making the business boom, it's what we do. You can do it, let us show you. I'm a father of 5 with maniacal focus to teach the proven moves, no hocus pocus. Cause get rich quick is not a move, but the proven system will make your life improve. See, I'm more than just a rhymer, like a horse with blinders. Focused on the Thrive Time Show is where you find us. He be the Z and I be the C. Teaching business skills from Clay to Z. We both grew up poor, but we're poor no more. The goal of this show is to help you score. I couldn't see the light until my son could see, but I learned to rock the mic in the high school scene. A young DJ with a $1 billion dream, numb to the pain that rejection brings. So I, like a sod farmer, sweated for that green. Now I'm on your radio with a thank you and please. Share this podcast with a friend and enemy. Now it's talks of business from Clay to Z.
It's a Thrive Time Show on the radio. Yes, it is. Oh, yeah. It's all about you. 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 Yeah. So we bring the boom.
So Jesus, who is exceptional, is having a conversation with ordinary. and exceptional and ordinary always have a conflict. Anytime exceptional people dwell in the midst of ordinary thinking people, there's always going to be conflict.